Hey there, Potters. How are you today? I'm sorry about the whole face thing. This episode's actually going to be a short review on a tool called the Steve's tool. It's a texture tool, but I have a bit of an issue. I have two of them. And since it is a bit close to Christmas, I'm going to be doing a giveaway, which means I'm going to be giving you the tool that I'll be featuring in this episode today. All you have to do is the stereotypical YouTube stuff: like, comment, subscribe, and I'm going to pick one of you by responding to you and pinning your comment to the very top of the comments. Make sure you reply back to me. I'll probably tag you on Instagram or Twitter, and I'll ask you for your address, and I'll just send it to you. With all of that out of the way, I really hope you enjoy the episode. I enjoyed working with this tool. Thank you, Steve, for sending me this tool. I really appreciate it. And now, on with the episode. The older I get, the cooler finger guns are, right? Hello, you dirty potters. How are you today? As we slowly start moving into things such as crazing, pinning, shrinkage, I figured I would start teaching you guys about some tools that would be really helpful after you get a little bit past the beginner sections of your knowledge, moving slowly into the intermediates of your work. Today we're going to talk about the Steve's tool. Come on, come out of there. Come out of the package. I'm not going to hurt you. That's a lie. I'm definitely going to hurt you. The Steve's tool is a pottery texture tool invented by Steve Graber. All it really is a stick that has textures at the very end of it that spin real good, real fast. I've seen these in stores before, but I've never really quite grabbed one for myself because when I saw this and I saw other people using it, I just thought to myself, oh, okay, that's like the Giffen grip version of chattering. Like, people who don't know how to chatter use this to get the same markings on their pottery, but that's not true. This can be used in a bunch of different ways, and it makes a randomized texture as opposed to chattering, which usually has the same texture all throughout with different variations of pressure. This thing is a little bit different. Granted, it really is just a texture roller that's vertical instead of horizontal. I know we've all seen these in ceramic art shops where you can kind of roll out your texture and put a different texture on top of your slab or something to that nature, but this is more meant for wheel-thrown pottery. Not only does it have the singular spur, the package comes with a bunch of different spurs like that. The Steve's tool can be used a bunch of different ways. You can use it on slabs when you're doing sculpture. You can technically use it on regular sculpture as well. You can use it on your wheel-thrown pottery vertically or horizontally. Unlike chattering, where you can only kind of go horizontal, you can't really chatter vertically. The setup of the Steve's tool is also really easy to use and figure out. It's not something you have to open up and you're like, oh, how do I use this? You really just have the stick that has a texture attached to it, that has a nut and a bolt. You can twist off some of the bat wings here that usually screw in the bolt to the stick, and you can put extra textures on there as you want. Granted, I usually just end up getting a little bit lazy and like taking this off and then just putting multiples of these on and then not screwing on the rest of it to secure it, and I'm just like, yup, that'll do. The texture tool itself comes with two different types of textures when you buy the package. One of them kind of looks like a star or a spur, while the other one is a little bit more pointy and usually makes little tiny dots. The spur seems to be the one that I like the most because I can attach multiples of these at a time and make a very large texture on my pots whenever I'm spinning this around. I didn't really understand this tool at first until I looked on the website and saw all the beautiful things that other people were making with it. And then I finally understand. Oh, it makes randomized textures. Instead of making the same pattern over and over and over again, this thing tries to imitate randomized natural textures. But enough talking about the tool. Let's see how it goes. Potter tip. When I was using this tool, I was being the dum-dum and I didn't understand completely how to set this tool up. The way this tool is supposed to be used is that you're supposed to put one thing on, put a washer in the middle of it, right? Then you're supposed to put your next texture on and keep doing the same thing. This gives it room to spin so that it can kind of free spin while you're making your pottery. If you decide to attach them all at once to that washer and you screw them in, it really doesn't spin as well. So be careful about that. So make sure that you're putting on one of these every time you put on another spur or another texture, because it really doesn't spin that well if you do it without some of these. I am 1000% sure this is not how you're supposed to set it up, but it looks really close to the pictures on the package, so I'm gonna go with it. And when you first get your hands on a Steve's tool, you're pretty much going to start doing what I'm about to do right here. You're going to throw yourself a cylinder and you're going to start making texture right away. And that's really fun for a while. I like this a lot. This is the primary job of the tool itself, is to make texture on your work, either while you're throwing or even in the leather phase if you want to put some leather software back on the wheel and just start putting a little bit of texture on there like this. This texture is essentially making little tiny lines in your clay body, complement of these spurs that you put on the side of the Steve's tool. And this is awesome for quite some time. I can't really understate that. This is pretty good for someone who's starting to use texture, especially with a lot of their intermediate work. But where I really saw this tool shine is when you started to stretch out the clay body after you put the texture on. I would generally get a cylinder about this size and about this thickness, put a bunch of texture on it. I'm gonna put a little bit more just because I enjoy a lot of texture. And after you put the amount of texture that you think you're comfortable with before you start stretching the cylinder, you'll start to see these textures kind of expand, much like silicone silicate on any other item that you're about to expand. And I like this a lot. I ended up doing this a bunch of times. Not only does this make a really interesting expanded texture that looks a little bit like tree bark, honestly, it also makes for great glaze play. If you ever wanted to play with a glaze that you know is going to look fantastic over texture, this is the type of tool that you want to use in order to expand that texture on the clay body after putting a little bit of texture on and just messing with the pot a tiny bit.
This right here is my favorite thing ever. In the history of forever. I think about this every day. I think about this all night long.
You see, now in comparison to the original cylinder texture that we started off with, we have a much more expanded texture on the clay body because we stretched out the skin. Potter tip! Please remember that when you're using this tool and you throw your initial cylinder, you should probably throw a cylinder that's a little bit thicker than you would normally throw. Actually, that's a lie. You should throw one that's a lot thicker. You know, like Venus of Willendorf kind of thick. That's only because if you decide to throw a cylinder, you don't make it thick enough, and you decide to stretch it in the way that I did just now, if you stretch it too far, which you want to stretch it far in order to expand that texture, you will sometimes end up ruining your clay body because it will shred through the clay body itself. You do have to remember that as you put this texture on the clay body, it's technically digging directly into the clay body itself. You're taking little pieces of clay away from your cylinder that you just threw, and as a result, making your clay body weaker and weaker in certain spots. So you either want to use more clay, or you want to use less pressure when you're pulling. This is one of the reasons at the beginning of the video why I said that this tool also works on leather soft ready to trim wear. It's because I ran into the issue of me not making my stuff super thick, and whenever I pulled out the texture and tried to expand on it, it ended up falling. Maybe about 1 or 2 times before I was like, I'm gonna try it a different method because I seem to be ripping my pot a lot. Some good lighting right now, honestly. Oh no! Okay, I didn't even get to show you. Usually I end up stretching the body to the point where some part of the clay or the weaker body ends up ripping from this tool digging into the clay body itself. But I guess as I was talking and recording, yep, there, yeah, you can see it. You can see it right there is where it ripped. That is a prime example of what happens if you do not make your clay body thick enough while using tools that dent or dig into your clay body itself. You know what? I'm gonna keep this take and I'm going to post it on YouTube because I think it's important to show your failures. But thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. I really hope that you enjoy this tool. I enjoyed this tool. I will fully admit, when I first got the Steve's tool, I was like, this is just the GIF and grip version of chattering. Like, for people that don't know how to chatter, they use this instead. But I talked to the creator of the Steve's tool and he was like, no, you can do a bunch of stuff with it. He directed me to the website. He showed me a bunch of different things you can do with it. Now, my favorite thing to do is to make a cylinder, put the texture on here, and slowly start expanding on it until it makes a fantastic tree bark-like texture. You can also use this tool vertically on a cylinder and start expanding and stretching upon that as well. The issue is that this makes me sad, so I'm not gonna do it anymore. But thank you, Dirty Potters, for joining me today. If you'd like to see a couple of sample pictures or you'd like to know where to get this tool, I will link that down below for you. They have their own website. That way you can check out this tool all you want. You guys have a fantastic weekend. Remember to always clean up your pottery space after you're done for the person who comes after you. And even if the person who comes after you is you, do it for yourself. Do it for yourself.
Thank you for your patronage.
This looks like a Thanksgiving roast. I bet you at least 5 Potter points so that I can put this inside the MoMA and call it modern art. Modern art.